On December 20th of 2018, after a long hiatus on YouTube, I decided to upload this video. It was a quick little meme of Thomas the Tank Engine and nothing more. I published the video and went on with my day, subconsciously acknowledging I'd never make a video that had anything to do with Thomas ever again. Until today! Pretty out of place for me to be making a video about Tom the Choo Choo, I know, but I had to make this video. This video, if everything goes accordingly, will be published on May 11th of 2020, the exact 75th anniversary of the Railway series, the series of books that Thomas and Friends was based on. That's a pretty big deal. It means that our boy Tom is 75 years old, only 25 years from 100. So what did Mattel, the corporate entity currently running Thomas, do to commemorate this? Well, as much as you can do with a global pandemic on your hands. Teaming up with Netflix, the crew behind Thomas released 3 new half-hour specials from the 24th season of Thomas and Friends. Yes, you heard me right, 24 seasons. These specials include Thomas and Friends Marvelous Machinery, A New Arrival, and World of Tomorrow, and Thomas and Friends, Thomas and the Royal Engine. Now, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Thomas, so it would seem sacrilege to my entire childhood not to check in to see how Thomas was doing in his 24th season on the air. That, and also the fact that my little siblings had it on the living room TV and there was nothing else to do in quarantine. So I watched it! Holy crap. To understand what I mean by holy crap, allow me to address some brief history on Thomas the Tank Engine. I plan to go further into this history in future videos where I discuss the current downfall of children's entertainment, but for now, all you need to know is this. Thomas first appeared in the second Railway series book released in 1946, aptly titled Thomas the Tank Engine, and promptly rose in popularity soon afterward, eventually becoming the most popular character in the books. Taking that into account, in 1984, when the television series first debuted, the writers dubbed their adaptation Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, choosing Thomas as the lead protagonist, an element of the show that was not a staple of the books. For 5 seasons, ranging from 1984 to 98, Thomas and Friends was a major success, featuring the talents of former Beatle Ringo Starr, foul-mouthed comedian George Carlin, and renowned actor Alec Baldwin, and coinciding merchandise including toys, books, video games, models, and so on. For showrunners Britt Allcroft and David Mitton, everything was looking up. That is, until the early 2000s. Thomas and the Magic Railroad was released in July of 2000, and it was met with not so good results. Not only were the reviews the same score as the budget, but the film only grossed $200,000 over its budget, not even close to breaking even. It was a box office bomb, and because of this, creator Britt Allcroft reluctantly sold the rights to her production company, and Thomas along with it, to Hit Entertainment. The ripple effect of this change is what I regard to be the main reason why many claim Thomas to be an educational baby show. Of course, there's no doubt that children are the target audience of the show, but the episodes that transpired after this change in creative control were way too babyish and moral heavy. The lesson was ham-fisted, the narration and storytelling is downright unwatchable unless you're a 2-year-old. And despite some decent episodes and seasons as some consider, this trend continued on until recently. And then things got even worse. Fans will tell you, yes, I said fans. While doing some research for this video, I found that there's an entire Thomas fan community on the internet. And as weird as that is, I kind of admire it in a way. Yes, it is odd that grown adults and teens still showcase their love for Thomas, but is odd exactly bad? Frankly, I don't view this as strange as something like the My Little Pony fandom. No offense to them, but MLP is no doubt something they were introduced to with a new generation of the show, whereas with Thomas, it's something they grew up with. It's wholesome to me that a kid's show like Thomas can still mean so much to people, and many attribute this to the fact of how memorable the show actually is. Many remember this show so fondly due to how real it felt. The set design, models, and storytelling was so realistic and vivid, it almost felt like you were actually there with the trains. Despite the trains having the ability to talk, the show was pretty grounded in reality. That was part of the charm. Some of the things that happened in the show could feasibly happen in real life. Heck, some of them did! The franchise also wasn't owned by some corporate conglomerate whose only motivation was to sell toys, like Paw Patrol or Blaze and the Monster Machines. Unlike nowadays where an episode's entire plot is dedicated to selling toys, the old stories told were genuine. They were simply adapted fairy tales the author would tell to cheer up his son when he was sick in bed with measles. You don't have a wholesome origin story like that for this show. Alas, all good things must come to an end, only to be met with corporate business execs who won't let the show freaking die! But I digress. I decided to watch some of the newest TV specials in the franchise. Please help me. Let us begin our journey with Thomas and the Royal Engine. The story begins with, whoa! Prince Harry? Didn't see this strapping young man coming. Okay, I know the show wants to stick with its British roots, but the series has become so Americanized at this point that I don't know why they even bother. Half of the demographic of Thomas are idiot American children who don't even know about British royalty. They hardly even know about the idiots running our country. Who knows? Maybe the royalty-obsessed middle-aged housewives will get a kick out of it when little Timmy puts his Thomas the Tank Engine on the screen. I don't know why they decided to shoehorn Prince Harry in, but Wait, what? Wait, no. Wait, Prince Harry, no. I didn't mean it. Come back. I didn't, you don't. Well, you win some, you lose some. Are you telling me that you got Prince Harry, the Prince Harry, on board with your little project, and you only gave him a 30-second cameo? You got one of the freaking Beatles to narrate your show. I'm sure you could get Prince Harry on for one measly episode. But nope. Instead, we get to have Thomas narrate. You stupid twat. Other than that, I don't have much to say about this episode. It's nothing grand, but it's serviceable? Whatever, no one's watching this show anymore anyway. It's definitely not the worst of the three, but it's definitely the most disappointing. Like, this is the 75th anniversary special. You got the royal family involved. That's a pretty big deal. But instead, it's this bargain bin crap. Whatever, let's just get on with the review. The episode starts with Railway Controller Sir Topham Hatt receiving a letter from the Queen.
I've seen this kind of letter before, but that was when we had a visit from the Queen.
Okay, what they're referencing here is an episode from the classic Thomas era, where the Queen actually does visit. I mean, okay? No kid watching this is going to understand that reference, but sure, why not?
Her Majesty requests the company of Sir Topham Hatt, who is to receive a special award for his services to the railway. Hooray!
Special services? A train crashes in, like, every other episode. Freaking idiot.
Also, by request of the young prince, the engine that brings you to London must be Thomas the Tank Engine.
Holy what a surprise! Did you guys see that coming? I didn't know he'd get picked. I had no idea what a twist. 1, 2, 3, 4. Frick yeah! Dancing chickens and Thomas any day of the week, baby! So Topham and Thomas get ready to visit the Queen. Okay, that's like one of the genuinely funny parts about this movie. Anyway, Thomas is decorated with fancy stuff. Topham Hatt is harassed by his mother. Thomas becomes as weightless as a feather and is thrown around in the air by a piece of merchandise. This is one of the first things that I hate about the special. The show no longer respects realism. Trains can become weightless at will. In fact, most of them can seemingly bounce and gesture on their own, like a disgusting Cars 2 character. Also, some characters show up in the movie and then never show up again. They serve no purpose other than making money for Mattel with merchandise. But the two problems only get worse as the specials go on, folks, so just you wait and see, my friends.
Now remember, it's left at the next junction.
Right.
No, left.
But
you said right, whereas I said always right anyway.
So Thomas gets scratched up, Top Hat loses his top hat, his suit gets ripped up, one of the men is attacked by a squirrel, some idiot train gets a bunch of mud on Thomas, oh no.
Good heavens, what happened to you?
well, we were just...
It's a long story.
Then Thomas meets the next piece of merchandise coming to store shelves. Her name is Duchess, and being forgetful is her character trait, kind of like her character in general. She's royal, I guess, who cares?
What a funny engine.
You said it, Thomas. Duchess bumps into Thomas while he's about to get washed down, and he gets all dirty. She goes on about how she's forgetting what she has to do because of the anxiety of there being so much to be done. I guess Duchess has never been to high school. Thomas isn't able to get washed down because they run out of water, so his fireman calls another wash down further down the line. So Topham Hatt's hat gets destroyed. F in the chat for that one. The gang realize that they don't have much time to get to London, so they leave without a wash down anyway, leaving the fireman behind. What a loser. Thomas has another pointless scene with Duchess. So Topham Hatt takes the fireman's place and gets even more dirty. They find Duchess Duchess, who forgot to check her safety valve. Idiot. Now it's burst, and because of this, she's left stranded on the tracks. Instead of leaving there like they should, they help Duchess get to London because they both need to get to London. How convenient.
Thank you for helping me, Thomas of Sodor.
That's quite all right. Thank you for helping me.
What? She didn't do Thomas. Why are you thanking her? Then we find out that the train Thomas saved turned out to be the royal train, and we finally get to see the... Wait, what? That's the Queen? Her render is terrible! The Minions movie did a better job than that! But I digress. It's a fine conclusion with the Queen and Prince Charles, who likes the Cubs, I guess. Oh, what do you know? I guess Prince Charles collects Thomas merch too. Remember, kids, to buy Thomas toys at a Target or Walmart near you. Then Topham and Thomas receive an award, and everyone cheers, and the story is wrapped up in a neat little bow. No harm, no foul, right? No. Not at all. The next specials to review are a part 1, part 2 kind of deal. They both suck, the second more than the first, but whatever, let's just get on with it so I can spend my quarantine in peace. Oh gosh, shut up! Shut up! I absolutely hate the new intro. It's so in your face and just not catchy at all. What happened to something iconic and subtle like this? It's perfect, nuanced, it's even a dang meme!
I was happily puffing along my branch line when suddenly...
No. No. You can't do that. You cannot put a flying car in Thomas and Friends. You can't. You know what? No. Maybe I'm just seeing things. They wouldn't put a flying car in Thomas the Tank Engine. They put a flying car in Thomas the Tank Engine.
You think God stays in heaven because he too lives in fear of what he's created?
Oh, hello, you three. What are you doing here?
We wanted to find out what the mysterious flying object was.
No, Thomas. It's unidentified flying object. Even Percy got it right. Also, keep in mind that Thomas takes place somewhere in the 1950s or 60s. So being as grounded in realism as it is, I guess Sodor would be the equivalent Wakanda of the Thomas universe. Or it isn't. And the writing team are just a bunch of idiots. Whichever option is your favorite, take your pick. But me personally love this new installment of the... TCU. So this girl, Ruth, announces to the engine some technology fair called the World of Tomorrow, which takes place on Sodor. So then there's this scene at the sheds, and before I address that, let me remind you that some of the characters in the original seasons, the main characters, aren't even present anymore. Heck, they were barely present in the last special. Two of these characters, Edward and Henry, first appeared in the first ever book of the Railway series, a book that predates Thomas. Thomas didn't even mean as much to the author as Edward did, because Eddie was the first character the author ever came up with. The one that started it all. The least you could do is give a speaking role instead of reducing him to a lazy cameo appearance. But I can't get mad about this now, because the next scene that transpires is so much more infuriating. This montage fantasy sequence, where the engines dream up the most infuriating garbage imaginable. I don't have much other to say other than that, so let's move on before my head explodes. Then Thomas thinks too hard about stuff, as he usually does, and comes to the conclusion that all this new technology could potentially make him and the rest of the engines on the island obsolete. Here we go, cliche conflict ahead. Then there's another fantasy sequence where the passengers have jetpacks and
Emily, I need you to pick up some wood for the stage at Knapford Yard. Next. Gordon and...
See, it's funny because Thomas is constantly being ignored. This is top-tier comedy, ladies and gentlemen. So the plot follows Thomas desperately trying to prevent any confusion and delay from happening. And see, I told you! There's a crash on this island nearly every day! How is Sir Topham Hatt not fired already? There's also this side plot of these overly comical villains planning a robbery for the technology show. And I do mean overly comical. You got the bumbling idiot, sidekick, and the mustache-twirling villain who wears the pants of the two.
Need to find that castle.
Oh, are you looking for Ulfstead Castle?
Yeah, we're not gonna do any stealing there or nothing.
What my friend here is trying to say.
They've also got a getaway car, but it's not a car, it's a getaway engine. Isn't that clever? Thomas screws everything up, which seems like it would serve as some sort of lesson for him, but everything is quickly resolved anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Then you have the most ridiculous part of the story, where Thomas chases after a jet engine created by some mad scientist Albert Einstein ripoff.
Really hope my blast booster 7 didn't get damaged while it was being unloaded.
No! I was not joking. Something similar happened in the classic era of Thomas, but it had the jet engine already hooked up behind him. This time he chases after it, which is so unrealistic and you can probably figure out why. Anyway, a new Japanese engine arrives on Sodor. The other engines begin to fear being replaced too, and then the episode leaves us with a to be continued. Aren't you excited to see how this next one is going to end? Cause I'm sure not. In our final special in this review, World of Tomorrow, the engines are admiring the sleek and electric Japanese engine that has just arrived. For real though, can we just take a second, just a second, to admire how, just how dazzling this engine is. It's just so freaking cool looking. Makes me wish I could purchase some smaller scale of this character for $19.99 at a Target or Walmart near you.
Aren't you Thomas?
Yes?
The famous engine that went around the world.
Yes.
Konnichiwa, Thomas.
Yes. What does that mean?
You're telling me that you went around the whole freaking world and you don't know what konnichiwa means? So everyone else becomes a nervous Nelly like Thomas in the previous episode and believes they will be replaced. But Thomas doesn't feel that way anymore because Ruth told him that he's a pretty special invention. Sure, okay. Oh shoot, and then we meet these mother right here. Remember them? They're pretty intimidating. They want to steal the invention. I bet Thomas is going to have to save the day. Woo! So then the convention starts. There's this magnet machine or whatever, who cares? Sonny, the getaway train, is struggling on the directions of where the dairy is, since the thieves are posing as chefs and need milk to further convince people that they are indeed chefs. Thomas meets up with him and helps him out. He brings the milk back and is thanked for it, which makes him feel really useful. Honestly, I'm kind of fine with his character. You can tell that he's playing around with the idea of being good and doesn't really want to deal with the crooks and their bullcrap. Of course, he doesn't add much to the story other than being a red herring for the plot, which we'll get to later. His character design and voice isn't too bad either. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of grasping at straws at this point. Sir Topham Hatt gets attacked by a milkshake machine that is overly complicated for a machine that makes milkshakes. Also, I'd like to point out you have flying cars and robots at this fair. And then some idiot brings along a milkshake dispenser. Like, I'm sorry, my guy, but saying that you have a lot of competition is kind of an understatement. Also, yes, there's a huge dancing robot. And Thomas, the tank engine. End my suffering right now, please. So then these idiots try to steal the robot, but fail miserably. So Thomas has to save the day and bring the robot back via the magnet machine from earlier. Setup and payoff, I guess. Then the baddies try and steal the plans for the hover car, and they chase down Sonny. But it's a trick, and they're not in Sonny, they're actually in Kenji because the writers realized he didn't have any plot relevance. Thomas unrealistically tries to stop Kenji despite him literally being the fastest engine in the world. The jet engine, the robot, Sir Topham Hatt, Gordon, they all join in the chase, and I just don't care for it because a chasing like this doesn't belong in Thomas. What am I saying? Nothing of these two specials belongs in Thomas. This is nothing like the simplicity and good storytelling we had in the originals. Anyway, the villains are arrested, Ruth and Sonny announce they're both staying in Sodor, the engines discover they're not going to be replaced, big surprise. A bunch of fireworks go off and the special ends. Thank goodness! So what are my final thoughts on this special? Well, to put it mildly, it wasted an hour of my life and I want to die. I'm sorry, but everything good about Thomas is dead at this point. We've seen flying cars and the Iron Giants to form Little Brother and Thomas now. It's a different show entirely. Whereas the original seasons were something unique in the vast library of children's entertainment, it's now pretty much like every other show. The same, CG animation, the same cookie-cutter plots. The new stuff they continue to add only blends it in more with these shows. Look, I'm sorry, but as much as you try to spice up the world of Thomas, you're only making things worse. Thomas is not meant for that, and no amount of dancing chickens or hover cars is going to save it. The show's on its last two wheels, just put it out of its misery and let it die already. I know I've been harsh for the majority of this review, but I will say there are some positives to Modern Thomas. Writer Michael White, the writer for the Royal Engine, has brought along some fairly admirable writing back to the show that harken back to the classic days. And you can tell that there's a team of writers working on Thomas that are trying their best to produce decent episodes, even if their efforts usually fall short. There's a song that was written in the early days of Thomas titled "Every Cloud Has a Silver Lining." As nice as a sentiment that may be, I just don't see that being the case for the current series. You may ask why I'm not so hopeful for the show, or why I even care, why I'm not griping about shows like Paw Patrol or Blaze and the Monster Machines. And yes, while I am mad at those types of shows in general, those shows started out that way from the ground up. Meanwhile, Thomas was something special. Many shows have tried to imitate and replicate the success of the show since, but none of them can get it right, and some of them have even failed miserably. It's sad to see that this show was lost to the corporate entities such as Mattel and Hit, companies that, needless to say, don't respect Thomas the way the original writers did. Who knows, what if Magic Railroad wasn't a flop? Would the show continue under the same names that created it, or would they have had the decency to end it earlier on? Even if the showrunners at Mattel have the goal to incorporate new writers for their TV shows, I doubt they'll have their time to shine. After season 24, the show is slated for a long hiatus, something that hasn't been done in the series for nearly 20 years. And many suspect that eventually this hiatus will lead to the final end of the show. And as happy as I am for that being a possibility, I'm also kind of sad about it. Even though the show has been pretty lackluster for years, the fact that it's been around for so long serves as a nice subconscious reminder to me that the show that entertained me so much as a kid will be able to do the same to a whole new generation of children. Because let's face it, the only reason children know about the show now is because it's still running now. So though the show isn't doing so great currently, at least it can introduce the kids to the show in the first place. Yes, I can always watch episodes of the classic era as I please. And yes, I can view the inspired fan content on YouTube that lets the spirit of Thomas continue. And I am intrigued to do so. But it's not the same if Thomas is no longer present, or if it's out of the public eye. However, if the decision to conclude the show can prevent Mattel from tarnishing its legacy any further, then so be it. Well, that video was a beast to edit, but if you liked it, which I'll assume you did given the fact that you're still here, please give it a like down below and subscribe. If you'd like to see more content like this, click the video in the top left corner, or if you want to watch something Thomas related, click the video below that I mentioned earlier. If neither of these satisfy you, stay tuned for next week's video. Finally, if you'd like to see me discuss something you personally enjoy, be sure to put it down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and have a day.